all that kind of good, easy groundwork. You can ask whatever you want. Sam will stay till midnight. I'll be gone long before then. Okay, so Sam, do your thing. Sorry, this won't plug into that.
This is fine.
You're stuck. Oh, and he has a beautiful, almost to scale drawing that he did for you guys.
Yes.
So there you go.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me, and thank you, Bill. We appreciate it. What I kind of wanted to go over tonight, or the goal, is to help you guys get a better understanding of what's happening, what has happened, why it happened, and where it's going, and how does this affect your pocketbook from a property tax standpoint, and then we'll kind of talk about different groups and break it up that way. So first, before we start, I want to zoom out over the last 5 years, and then I'm going to focus on this year, because I'm going to answer probably the most common question first. What's the difference between my market value and the assessed value, and why is that different? Why am I looking at two different numbers on the paper I got in the mail on my initial value notice? So let me zoom out and I'll explain why. So probably from 2015 to 2019, Sugar Land's growing fast. It's probably took less than a 10% increase each year. Now the maximum increase you can take on your homestead is 10%. That is across the state max increase that you can take. So 2019, market went up 9-10% maybe. So your market value and your appraised value were the same usually. Now by the way, this is an average of what has happened in Fort Bend County. Now what happened in 2020? COVID. What did they do with COVID? Economic stimulus and low interest rates. Money was cheap. What did that do to home prices? Went way up. So your market value in 2020 probably went up 18%, about. So the blue line here is your market value. The green line is your appraised value. Well, your appraised value can only go up 10. So that's why there's a gap here. Okay? That's why there's a gap between the two. And that's why there's a number. What happened in 2021? Same thing. We weren't done with it yet. Lower interest rates, even lower than 2021. Market went up 18 or maybe even 20% in some places. So it created an even larger gap. And the same thing in 2023. Well, what happened this year? Interest rates went up. Interest rates at the peak, I think, were mid 8%. So that has a negative effect on home prices, or at least here, it's going to at least level it out a little bit. So what has happened in 2024 is Fort Bend County has acknowledged the fact that the market is cooling off. And all of the data that they use is the data they're allowed to use is from January 1st, 2023 through January 31st of 2024. So that 13-month window, they look back and say, okay, what sold? And based on your value that you get in the mail is based on a snapshot of what Fort Bend County think you could have sold your home for on January 1st of 2024 of this year. So this report here, this is the Fort Bend County's Appraisal District's Market Trends Report. This is.
Can I get that on their own?
Yes, this is.
So I could share that on the site as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a publicly available report. I am not making this up. This is what they have provided to us. And so the increases.
And I'll post it for you guys. You can look at it this evening or tomorrow.
Yeah, but just quickly, 4.4% increase for residential property this year, which is a lot less than the previous 2 years. The previous 2 years has probably been 18 and 20%. Your average homestead property has gone up 2.1%. That's not a lot. That's not a lot on the market value. But remember, this appraised value number is going to continue to increase at a rate of 10% until it reaches your market value. So yes, they've acknowledged that the market is cooling, but there is a chance that you're still going to take a 10% increase on your appraised value if you have a gap here. Now keep in mind this chart, this fancy chart here, this is an average of what's happened in Fort Bend. Your numbers could be close together. I've even seen a few people who got an initial reduction this year. Some people are flat. Some people I've seen got up 30%. So this is an average. It's all over the place. I'm happy to look at everyone's paper that brought it tonight if they want to know what's going on. So, but there is a chance, even though your market value is flat or even down, that you're still going to take an increase in the appraised value. Now, so that's from a local market standpoint. Let's talk about what happened on a state level. You talked about voting's important. Okay, well, it's not just city officials that have an effect on your tax rates or your tax bill. At a state level, last year, Greg Abbott said he was going to pass the largest property tax cut in Texas history. He did. He did. If you are over 65 and you've lived in your home, there's a chance that even though your value went up 10%, that you probably paid a lot less in property taxes than you did in 2022. I took one of my neighbors, just as an example. She's over 65. I think she's 70. In 2022, her assessed value was $360,000. She paid a $4,600 property tax bill. Okay. 2023, she was in this gap here. She took a 10% increase in her assessed value, which is now $396. But because of the changes made into the homestead exemption and the over 65 exemption at a state level, she paid $2,944. So she actually had, even though her value went up 10%, she had a 36% drop in the money that she paid, because that's what the people at the state said they were going to do. Why did that happen? There's a $30 billion surplus, and enough people were griping about property taxes that we said they need to do something about it. So they took a lot of that money, gave it to the schools, bought down the tax rate. So that's from an over 65. If you have a homestead and you have an over 65 exemption, that's what happened. If you're not 65, if you just have a regular homestead exemption, you probably also paid less because of what happened at a state level. You got more exempt value with your homestead exemption. The exempt value went from $40,000 to $100,000. So you're basically paying taxes on less money. So if you're in this gap year last year, your value might have gone up, but with a homestead exemption, you probably paid less or flat on your tax bill. Also, let's say that's just the homestead umbrella, whether it's your house or if you have an over 65 exemption. The other thing they passed was a 20% cap on everything else. Before, if you had land, commercial property, rental homes, apartments, industrial buildings, there was no limit as to how much they could increase that value. We've had some clients that are in owner-occupied buildings that have gone from $2 to $4 million in 1 year. I mean, it's just wild. Like some of the increases that we saw from 21 to 23. This year, they put a 20% cap on that. So the appraised value can't be whatever, 20% is the highest that it can go. Now, that's not always going to come into effect because now the interest rates are higher. There's not a whole lot out there that went up 20%. So yes, they're protecting you with that if you have a rental home or you own other property. But that they call it circuit breaker. That didn't really kick in that often because of the market cooling off. So that's just a general overview of what's going on. I know everyone probably has questions about your own situation or what's happening in my neighborhood or why am I noticed this way? Why am I noticed more than my neighbors? But I think now's the time to do a Q&A.
Yeah.
And
I'm certainly ready.
into it.
I'm going to pass a microphone around in a moment so that we can record your answer. You're not on video, okay? But I also want to say, those of you that have never sat through the fund, once a year for about 6 weeks, our council in particular, we go in at 7:30 in the morning and we listen to everything our executive team says we need, what we don't need anymore, what we need to do different. And this goes on for about 6 weeks, okay? And we're reviewing numbers. What they're doing is, going back to what you were saying a moment ago, as a taxing authority, we're going to be told what it costs to do the services that our citizens want, in particular in this case, the city of Sugar Land. They want police, they want fire, they want animal services, they want mobility, they want whatever. The executive team's going to say it costs X to provide those services. That's what the executive team will tell us. Then they come back and say, with the increases or decreases in the appraisals that are going out, how do we get to that number, whatever that number is? So for us as a council, we want to control, one, what the expectations of are the property owners, that they want all police officers have helicopters. No, probably not. We're not going to do helicopters for everybody. You see what I'm saying? I mean, you got to control the spending so that when they turn it over to here's what the revenue, tax revenue is based on the appraised values in our county, then we can go, okay, to hit that number, we need to be at X, Y, or Z. And I like to survey the group. Does anybody live in Sugar Land here? Okay, good. Does anyone in here know, not you, does anyone in here know what the residential property tax rate is in Sugar Land? And not you. And not you. Does anyone know what the residential property tax rate is in Sugar Land?
It feels like 1,000,000%.
What is it?
It feels like 1,000,000%.
It does, doesn't it? Do you realize, and this is why I hope that, remember I told you an educated voter is power? So we have maintained, the city of Sugar Land is the second lowest property tax rate in the state of Texas, cities with 60,000 or more. Second lowest. Watch this. The only city around here that's lower than the city of Sugar Land, keep in mind what we have. Best police, best fire. We have baseball. We have smart financial. We have an airport. We have it all, right? Essentially. There's one city, city of Stafford. They have no residential property tax. City of Stafford has 0 residential property tax. Now I want you to think about what I just said. The city of Pearland is almost double our 0.35. It's not quite double. I think it's 0.68. Think about it. You pick your home up from Sugar Land and you sit it in Pearland, you're going to go from a 0.35 to a 0.68 just for the city tax. Don't know what their school taxes are. I know our school taxes here feel like $1 million. Do you know what? Watch this. Do you know what your school tax rate is? Do you? Try 1.21 for one of them. Instead of 0.35, you're at 1.21 at one of our schools. And I'm not trying to pick on these taxing authorities, but you are the taxpayers. If you don't know what your tax rates are, I really don't want to see your name on social media complaining, honest to God. I know that sounds terrible, but you are ultimately in control of us who are spending. We decide what we spend. So does that make sense? This conversation is paramount to me as a decision maker for you moving forward. And what he's here to do is help you sort of manage through what's happening in Austin. And then you come back to me and every other decision maker that you elected or didn't elect because you didn't vote, you come back to us and say, look, We don't need helicopters for every police officer. Whatever it is we're suggesting, right? You need to rein us in so we're not over or underspending. Is all that clear? 0.35 is pretty stinking amazing. So I know you had a question. You mind leading off?
That's fine.
And you don't have to put it in your mouth, just kind of in the area.
Got it.
And this is for you.
Sure.
And when you get your appraisal, they break it down to your, I don't have the paper in front of me, but one piece is the land value. And then the other piece is the property itself.
Improvement. They call it improvement. Yeah.
You may need to repeat for them in the back.
Okay. So when you get your, it's called an initial value notice. When you get it in the mail, it has a breakdown. One part is the land. The other they call an improvement. A common misconception is that, oh, I didn't make an improvement. I didn't improve my property. That's just the word they use. An improvement is defined as anything on your property above the dirt. So the home, the driveway, the detached garage, like the back patio, the pergola, anything above the dirt falls under the umbrella of the word improvement.
So that part is more understood. Now the land value piece is what gets me, because when I have appealed in the past, I've been able to work on the house structure, but the land they couldn't really explain. When I looked this past year, my land value went up 33%.
Okay.
I have no idea why. I mean, my flood insurance has gone up, so it doesn't really tell me there.
Yep.
My land's got more valuable. And I think they do it based on neighborhood numbers. There's a neighborhood higher valued than mine. Their land value price went down 40%. And so how, I don't know if you can answer it, but how do you appeal or fight what they've proposed for your land value?
To answer your, I'd have to look at yours specifically, but usually when you're fighting land is pretty cut and dry, because there's two things that really matter. It's one, what are people paying for dirt around you? If you've been at $5 a foot, if you've been at $5,
let's say I'm in new territory. It's
Okay.
already developed.
Right.
Both neighborhoods in new territory that are the zone of the same schools, whatever. One has a gated fence to get in, so and it's higher property values. Their lot, same size as mine or even bigger, is valued at $50,000 less than mine.
Okay.
And it perplexes. I mean, I can't even.
Yeah.
Other neighborhoods have all gone up, except for a few neighborhoods that have gone down that much,
Right.
and that much lower. So
Yeah,
I didn't know if when you fight it, what do you do on the?
Like when you fight, when you're arguing land, it's
It's an overall package, right? So when I go in, I got my comps, and when I fight it and I say, well, this value, how do I compare a house in another neighborhood to mine? They adjust it based on the land difference. So if I try to compare my house to one in that one neighborhood where it's 50,000 less, they're automatically going to put 50,000 more in my house versus their comp.
Right.
When in fact, it's the same size and it's actually a nicer neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gated and everything. But I didn't know have you ever run across that or?
Yeah.
And what is your defense or?
We look at the neighborhood as a whole. If there's a question like that, I'd like to look at that and say, why did this area go down, or why did this go up when they're right next to each other?
And it was a 1 year. I mean, it just
the only time I've seen that is probably after Hurricane Harvey, when they had to redraw some flood lines. If some people got an adjustment, but other than that, that's the only time I've seen like that large of a disparity as far as a decrease in land value. But if it's wrong, it's wrong, and then you protest and argue it.
all right.
So, yeah.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
There you go.
We all know Andrew Wolf.
So, to his question, I protest my taxes every year, even if I have nothing to say, just to waste their time. I own two houses right next to each other, and 1 year, one house went up a bunch, and the other didn't. And when I went in to question them, the actual person who drives around said that they only check 2-story houses one year and 1-story houses the next year. And that's why the house next to me that I own went up substantially more than the house I live in. I don't know if they're still doing that or if they're supposed to do that, but I actually had a question too.
Yeah.
So when I go in and protest, some years they'll say, yeah, we'll accept the quote for the driveway, and some years they'll say, no, it's a driveway, you can't fight that. Is there a list somewhere that says what they have to accept and what they don't?
There's not a list, and it is, you know, unfortunately, sometimes you get in there on a good day and sometimes you get in there on a bad day.
Okay.
But as far as things that matter in a hearing, usually what they like to listen to is something that has to do with function of the home. For example, like your roof. If your roof is leaking, it's not serving its function. So if it's $25,000 roof, a lot of times they'll give you that full value off of the market value. Okay. Another one is, like, say, a foundation. Foundation's cracked and moving. A lot of times that's a $10,000 fix. That's a high dollar item. So it's not performing its function. So they'll give you that full value. If you want to do on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you want to do a kitchen remodel, but your cabinets hold your dishes just fine, you can't provide a quote for the remodel and say, I take this off the value, because that's already factored in. So when you're presenting something in here, think function. Like, how does this affect the function of the home? But as far as them following that to a T 100% of the time, we have bad luck too.
Okay.
In a hearing.
Can I add? So,
yes.
A thought that came to my mind about all of this was, it's not a perfect system. Like, there may even be a better way of doing it, but the way they do it now is what he just described. I want to make that clear. No one in this room, I don't think it's a perfect system. I don't think he thinks it's I don't think anyone does. But this system is what we have for the time being, and they are always trying to improve it. Some people say, I want to do away with property tax altogether. No property tax for anybody, anywhere. Well, I suppose you could do that if nobody ever wanted to live here and you didn't need any services whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how you would do that, because they're not generating the tax revenue to pay for the police, the fire, and blah, blah, blah any other way right now. And so we've thought about, you hear terms of usage tax. You go buy your dinner tonight, you don't have property tax, but your usage tax, your meal would have been, $76.50 for a burger. But you're going to have police and fire. I mean, this has been a debate forever. So as I'm hearing his response to Andrew, I don't think it's a perfect system. I think it's what we have, and learning how to work around it. And by the way, as I look through the room, those of you that don't know, we have if I may, don't pick on me, Sandy. Yeah. So Sandy's in the mortgage industry. She understands the effect of mortgage rates on your purchase, your sale. She gets that, and she's also a homeowner here in Greatwood. My daughter, and Carol, if I may, we've got realtors all in here. You guys have seen the effect of this clearly, and you've seen the demand, you've seen the decline, you've seen sellers, you've seen it's not a perfect system. But if no one wanted to live here, and I mean this, and I'm going to say this with pretty good confidence, if no one wanted to live in Fort Bend County, your property values would not be what they are today. But everyone wants to live here for the probably similar reasons that you do. Maybe not the exact same, but probably similar reasons. So the system's not perfect. Learn how to work around it. And you've been good about giving me advice. I'm going to assume you would give them advice if you guys would reach out to Sam, and Sam would give you advice. So don't hesitate to ever ask. Now, I want to bring up something, and I'll post it to the site also. But Bill Rickert shared with me a couple years ago and we should all know about this, but not everyone does. It's a website that's set up, and it's called Truth in Tax, or I'm sorry, Truth in Taxation. And Fort Bend County maintains a site that if you'll put your address in, and I'll post the URL. If you'll put your address in and you don't know what your taxing authorities are, it is the coolest thing, because you will see every taxing authority that your address is submitting to. You will see if I'm in a lid or I'm in a mud or whatever. It's all right there in front of your nose. And most people say, I've never heard of that. Well, you probably have never heard of that. Okay, and that's okay. But now you have, I'll put it on the site where you got this information. And I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about so you'll understand your rates when you are being taxed. Okay, I'm going to come back up here. So here's the City of Sugar Land's page that comes up. Any of your taxing authorities will have a page here. Okay, and you'll look over what the 2022 tax rate was, what it was, blah, 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 and you'll go through and you'll see the total, 0.35. The house that I live in is costing $1,386 to the City of Sugar Land, and I'm right here in Greatwood, $1,386. What does that pay for? Police, fire, our utilities, the list goes on and on and on. The one that I would have you go, what are we paying for? Drainage rates, super, it's 0.012. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it's not the painful one, because that's $46 a year on a $500,000 home. But watch this. Here's is going to start to feel, you're going to feel it here in a second. You and Sugar Land pay 0.35 per 100 for all your police, fire, and everything else you have, right? What services do you get from the county? Can someone name what service you get from the county being a resident of Sugar Land? Libraries, that's great, great answer. What else? Roads, some of the roads even, sure. Not all of the roads, keep going. Because a lot of the roads, TxDOT is the freeway. TxDOT is Highway 90. The major roads are usually a state road, and that's why you'll get frustrated if the grass is not cut. You're like, what's going on? Well, TxDOT has other concerns, and they're not worried about the grass sometimes. You with me? County does the same thing. Keep going. I'm asking you, what are your county services? And you'll appreciate what I'm leading you to.
Animal control. Animal control.
Animal control. City of Sugar Land has animal control. That's one. They do have animal services.
So does the county.
Yeah, county. They both have animal services. What?
Fort Bend County.
Fort Bend County only.
There's not a whole lot.
What about your district attorney's office? What about I want you to think beyond just the norm, okay? So road and bridge, there are services. Here's why I bring it up, okay? How many residents are in Fort Bend County, plus or minus? 920,000-ish, soon to be 1 million, because everybody wants to be here, right? So you're paying 0.42 to have county services that for the most part you don't utilize. And watch this, you don't use their police services, you don't use their fire, you don't use their EMS, but then you pay 0.35 for all of the top services in the state. Literally, your police, fire, and EMS, the best services in the state, hands down, okay? But you're also paying for them at the county and you're not getting them, okay? So I had a county commissioner tell me recently, well, you just don't understand how this works. And I said, no, I know exactly how it works. You need to figure it out, buddy. That's all. I'm not going to pick on people. But they're 0.43. So you asked earlier, what hurts? We pay Lamar it's 1.14 instead of 0.35. We pay Lamar $4,200 a year. And by the way, I'm happy to pay for public education, but I'm paying $4,200, and then I'm paying the city $1,300. So when you start feeling like you're getting hammered on your property taxes, I want you to pay attention to this side alone, and it'll tell you where your money's going. Okay? And I'm not picking on the school or anyone. I'm just saying, here's the lid. Who loves the lid who loves lid 11 in Greatwood? Anybody?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Love the lid 11, right? Here's what it cost me, $1,060 a year. It's all right here. This data is
the levy
yours
improvement.
to educate yourself and your neighbors. It's all, Bill is the reason I even found it. Bill said, you got to check it out. Oh, you can't ask without the mic. What's that?
We're new to the area.
We
so,
love you for being new.
Okay. What is LID? Sorry.
LID, Levy Improvement District. So when the Brazos River rises, the only thing that keeps it from going into my kitchen is LID 11, is Levy Improvement District 11. So does anyone live in New Territory here? I know we have Bill, we've got several. So you have LID 7. So what is LID 7 doing right now for not only New Territory, but it affects all of us? What is LID 7 doing right now? Yeah, the river project, which is about a $33 million river project. Why is it even necessary?
Keep the river in the banks.
Yeah, so what's happening is our river, like every river in the world, meanders. And it goes where it wants to go, especially when your river is banked by sand. No wonder it's headed to New Territory, right? So what the LID 7, Levy Improvement District 7, has done is they put together grant money and other dollars, and they are funding this river erosion project that will help slow that down. You don't want it to, in fact, where it is now, there was a soccer field and other sporting, and the river just keeps taking a bite out of it. And sooner or later, it may get to the homes, okay? So does anyone understand the value when, and I know you may know the number. Do you know what the county value is, appraised value on all the land that's appraised in the county? Anybody have any idea? Because it's actually a posted number, and it's unbelievable. Okay? Watch. I'm going to give you Sugarland's. So Sugarland's appraised value for all in, we're talking residential, commercial, is about $21 billion. The river is a threat to every property in any county. Because if that river is allowed to continue to move and meander, which it naturally does, it's not unnatural, it naturally does. If we're not doing something to control that, we're going to have a problem. Ultimately, our property values are going to do what? They're going to tank, right? None of us want that. So we need the Levy Improvement District. Thank you for on it. That's a great question. Some people go, I don't want to ask that. That's a great, and by the way, a mud, you know what that is? Does anyone want to tell her because she's so sweet?
But we're not in mud, I don't think, are we?
Yeah, you don't have a mud in Greatwood anymore. We had a mud before we were annexed. It's a what?
Municipal utility district.
Aren't they cute? Yeah, we all are. We're familiar with it. Hold on, Bill. Hold on, Bill. Yes, sir.
So what was it you said you were paying on LID 11?
I'll have to go back and
I
look.
think it was like 1,000 or
$1,000.
yeah. So I'm close to 2,000.
Oh, so
And LID 7.
7. He's looking up truth and taxation on New Territory. Thank you. LID 7 is closer to $2,000. Okay, so again, here's a great question. When we're going back to the work he's doing, does the work of LID 7 justify $2,000 a year in property taxes? I don't know. I don't live in New Territory. Yes, sir.
But is it Greatwood's levy is at a higher standard than New Territory? Because when you have Harvey, they had to come in and put water balloon fillers to make it even with Greatwood, or they were going to be in a.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah, New Territory, when it was built, the standard was a certain level, and the front side on Highway 90 was at the standard. It didn't have to have a levee.
Right.
And then when the new standard came in, all the levees had to be raised. They were raised. But the front is not at the new level, but there was not a levee there, so they didn't have to
Absolutely.
raise it.
But your levy at 59 in the Brazos River is not at the same height as Greatwood is. So if you're going northbound,
It may not be, but the levy in New Territory is at the county standard, which is 2 feet above the federal standard, right? And that's what they have to build to in the county. So I'm not sure if the LID 11 levy is actually higher than that.
Yeah, we elevated it, 6 feet or something a couple years ago. So here's the point, guys. So the lid 7 and lid 11 in this case, they're doing their job of trying to keep water out of our homes, essentially, on our properties. So when you look at the truth in taxation, or you look at your whatever documents you're running around with, you really do need to measure, are they doing the right things with the money they're asking for? Because you may come to one of them, one line item, and go, what are they doing? Why does it keep going up? Whatever. Now, do you guys realize the city of Sugar Land, finally, I think it took 9 years, we finally, I don't know if we've gotten the check yet, but the feds are finally helping us do, from the lid 7 project, to continue the river erosion project through Sugar Land under the Brazos River, and it's like $68 million, okay? And it's a lot of money, but we literally, it's been like 9 years of, pushing buttons and, doing all that we have to help you guys. Ultimately, we've got to stop it. And I want to say we lost 102 feet, I forget the number, of the bank to the Brazos River Park. If you ever go over there where the animal park is, that bank keeps moving and washing away. And I think they measured it over 2 or 3 years. It's been a loss of like 100 feet. And that's a long way, okay? That's a lot of gone, right? So they're doing this project. So then you look at your tax responsibility on those items and you say, you know what? It's worth it for me to pay $1,000 or $13 for my police, my fire, my roads, my, whatever's not working, that it's worth it. Or it's not. If it's not, you come to us and you say, wait, what are you guys doing? $1,300 a year, you're killing me, right? Well, we don't want to overtax you for services you don't need. I told the guy a year ago, I said, well, you know what we could do? We could just cut back your fire services. He goes, no, we want fire services. I said, okay, how about your police services? No, we love our police service. I said, what do you want me to cut back to spend less? He goes, what? I'm like, everything costs something. And by the way, we don't dictate what the police, the fire, the public work, we don't say, oh, okay, you're only allowed to charge X number. Whatever it costs, and then you guys decide what you still want. I don't want people to spray for mosquitoes. You can cut that out. No, we kind of like that. Okay, well, I don't want stormwater services. No, we want those. That's how it goes. Sir, your questions are so genuine because you're new to the area.
So I'm wondering, with these levy districts, how much we pay for them and the projects they do, how does that affect the rate we pay for things like flood insurance?
Oh, the question of the hour. Bill and I could go on. So, wow. Okay. So the city of Sugar Land, by the way, great question. So what he asked was, how does the work of the levy affect your flood insurance rates? You would think, going back to Pat's comment about, we have this big, humongous levy, right? We should have like really, really low flood insurance rates. FEMA doesn't see it that way. FEMA's functioning on a deficit, I think I saw the other day, correct me if I'm wrong, 12 billion, is that right? FEMA's functioning on a like a $12 billion, whatever the number is, $12 billion deficit right now, like the Postal Service and everything else. So what they want to do is change our rating system. It's called 2.0 now. And that 2.0 system didn't go through a public process of you standing out front going, no way, right? They're just trying to implement a 2.0 process to help regulate or decrease their losses due to all the natural disasters mostly that occur around our nation. And I get it, we need to help people, right? But at the same time, if we have a lid, I would think we would get more recognition because we spend X every year to protect ourselves from that particular disaster. It's really not currently seen. It's improved. We have a better rating, but I just paid my flood insurance. It feels like yesterday. It wasn't, but it's expensive. And if you came in now, here's one. If you come in now, like you've never had flood insurance, and you start your flood insurance now, they're like, oh, we're going to make our deficit up on one, right? I mean, I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like $2,100. It was some, and by the way, that's not installments. That's a check you write for X. So mine was, I don't know, $700 because they pace you up to that rate. So 700, 800, whatever the pace is, you go up. Okay, I'm sorry I digress. There's a lot of information, but yes and no to your question. We're trying to protect our community. We would love lower rates. It's not been realized yet. And I will tell you, you guys may not have, who's been to a city council member in 1 year? Anybody but Bill? Put your hand down. You were part of us. We got Pat. Thank you, Pat. Love you guys. So we got 3 people in here been into a city councilman. About a year and a half-ish. Bill might remember better. The city of Sugar Land told FEMA no. And we signed an agreement. No, explain yourself, essentially. We don't want that. No, you got to do this better. And thankfully, other cities joined behind us and said, no, explain yourself. Make this work. And everything takes time. I wish it was overnight. It doesn't happen that way. Okay. So again, if you are uneducated, by the way, we're all uneducated about something. Okay. I am about a lot of things. But if this is your thing, if this is your thing, you should be the sharpest tack in the room right now, okay? But if you're not, get caught up. It's okay. But the way to fix it is with your vote. That's it. Because, and I'm going to pick on the city of Sugar Land because I'm part of it. If we decide, you know what, we're just going to spend, and we take it from 0.35 to 0.45, right? It's way under Pearland. Can you imagine? Well, you guys would be like, ugh. We went from $1,300 a year to $2,100 a year. What is going on in there, right? I would expect you guys to call or come to council, but you guys seem to be pretty happy because you never show up, right? So come to a meeting from time to time. Do we have any more questions? I know you do for Sam.
So it's not that I fault the city of Sugar Land for taking their piece, or the county for taking their piece, or the lids, or the schools, or any of those things. But compounded, I pay more on my property than I pay in a mortgage or in insurance or in any of those things. So what sort of mitigation or relief can an average citizen get when everybody is coming with their hand out?
So I pay, my city's only $1,300, I'm making your point. My city's only $1,300. My county is plus or minus $1,500, but all in, $8,299 to live in my house in Greatwood. That's the taxes all in. And by the way, when you pull your address up, it will show you specifically what your all in is in Sugar Creek and wherever you're at in Fort Bend and even beyond, because other counties do the same. But Fort Bend, in my opinion, they do a really good job of maintaining that sheet. Bill's got another one. He's the treasurer. He gets to talk.
Well, we talked about the 10% cap, right? Mm-hmm. But there's another aspect that, caps your tax. Just because your taxable value goes up 10%, if the rates, were to stay the same, then you would go up 10%. But the county and the city have a 3.5% cap on existing tax base, right? So existing homes, existing businesses, everything that were taxed the previous year, the total amount they can collect can only go up 3.5%. And if they want to set the tax rate at a level that's going to make it go up above that 3.5%, then it has to go to a vote of the voters, which for the school districts, that cap is 2.5%. And you just saw in the past year when Fort Bend ISD went to the voters and asked to go above that cap, right? And people voted for it. So they voted to raise their taxes and to ignore that mechanism that's in place. So, there is that other mechanism. Just because your valuation goes up 10% doesn't mean your taxes will actually go up at the same rate. Now, typically what most taxing entities do, they want to be right at that 3.5%, right? Because they don't want to leave money on the table. Because if they leave it on the table this year, then they won't never get it back, right? So they're always playing the game of setting that tax rate right below that 3.5% that forces it to go to the voters, right?
So Bill just made an interesting point about is it better for a taxing authority to not increase it all 1 year and hit you heavy another year? Or is it better, they know it's going up. We already know inflation, right? We know it's going to go up 2, 3, 8%. What if they decided, hey, we're just going to go up 2% and then 2% and then 2%? Because rarely is it going to go down unless costs go down, right? I'm being practical here for a minute. So these are all the decisions that have to be made by the elected people that you don't know. The elected people you've not visited with and said, my situation is dire. My situation is I'm getting taxed out of my home unless you help me. Okay? If you're not visiting your elected officials, I'm telling you now, they probably don't know how dire your situation could be. Does that make sense? So I have a really weird situation, but it affects all of you. And I'm on economic development in Sugar Land as a council member. And I have to sit there happily and watch as our city is developing and redeveloping. But what happens when we redevelop and develop in the right direction? What happens when we bring the new businesses you want? One, and by the way, I'm only stating what I read in the Houston Chronicle, okay? The Houston Chronicle says that Trader Joe's is coming to Sugar Land, right? That's not from, I'm under all kind of rules, right? But let's say that our city brings a business like them to the city. What's going to happen to your property values? They're going to go up. Why? Because people want to be around that. So here's an example. I love a conversation I'm having about Imperial. Does anybody know about that Imperial redevelopment? Anybody in Sugar Land? Okay, so I'm only stating public information right now. It's potentially a $1 billion project. Potentially. All right? What will that do to the property, more than likely, the property valuations just in the immediate neighborhood? Yeah, like you would literally need to stand on a chair and a ladder and keep doing that. Literally, because what happens to a $200,000 property when next door is a $1 billion property? You tell me. It's going to go up. And to the realtors in here, you all understand what I'm talking about. People are going to want to be there. They're going to, oh, it's Disney, it's whatever rumors that goes around, right? We want to be there. All the property values go through the roof. And then next year, you're calling Sam saying, Sam, what's the deal? And Sam's going to say, yeah, but you have the theme park next door to you, or whatever the rumor is of the day, right? That is how this all works. What you want are the people making the decision on the rate that's on that sheet. You want the people to go, no, we don't need to spend that much. Let's back off. We got the dollars coming in, let's back off. So that's where I'm begging you to get involved. Truth in Taxation, Fort Bend County, simple. It's, yes. Oh, we got a question in the back.
For seniors.
Good to see you, brother. Yes, sir.
For some of the seniors in here, don't know if you know that your school taxes can be frozen once you hit 65. You just go down to the Fort Bend County tax office, and if the school tax is 1.2 or whatever, you freeze it, and if it happens to go to 6% the following year, you're only paying 1.2 for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's frozen.
It doesn't make a difference.
Sam?
That's 85% correct. It's not the rate. A ceiling is put on the amount that you paid.
Oh, yes.
So if you paid $4,000 one year, you will never pay more than $4,000 each year as long as you stay in that home.
I like what he said better.
And it doesn't matter whether your wife or yourself, husband, whoever turns 65 and they're on the deed.
Correct.
That person, can do it. Unfortunately, my wife was older than I, and we've frozen our taxes 9 years ago. So
It also applies to disabled. Anybody in the household is disabled.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
that's
the
all right.
next question that I have from the smart corner of the room here is, are there other taxes that you can freeze in the same way, or is it only school taxes?
And at 65, the only age.
60, is 65 the only age?
Yes, 65 is the only one where a ceiling is put on the amount. I'm going to describe it as a ceiling instead of the word frozen, just because if we have, let's say we have some kind of 2008 market crash and your value plummets, you can still pay less than what's on that, but you'll never pay more. So a ceiling is put on it.
Can you freeze it when it's less?
I don't think so. No. But it'll never go more than that amount. Yes.
Isn't there too also if you get a ceiling but then you move within the county, can't you keep that ceiling? Isn't there a certification or something?
Yes. So you can transfer a limitation. Let's say, but if you move from you can probably expand on this, but if you live in a $300,000 home with an over 65 exemption and you move into $1 million home, you're going to pay more in taxes, but the percentage of what transfers with it.
Yeah.
Yes. So just because you move to $1 million home with your over 65 exempt, you're going to pay a lot less than the person next door to you in another $1 million home that doesn't have it. Yeah.
Back to what William was talking about, the new development in Sugar Land, right? So when that new development comes online, that's not that initial year. It's not part of that 3.5% cap calculation, right? So those neighboring places are still going to get hit with 3.5%, even though all this other future revenue is coming online because it's not in that calculation, right, on there. And it's much harder for the city of Sugar Land because most of the city's built out, right? So the 3.5% cap is more of a challenge for a city like Sugar Land than it should be for a county like Fort Bend because of all the growth, all the new neighborhoods going up, all the new tax for every year. We have, I'm from Louisiana originally, as we would say there, buku new revenue coming in that, theoretically we should be in a mode to be able to reduce tax rates significantly, but you're typically not going to do it below, getting below that 3.5% because it's lost forever.
In some states, when they build new developments, and I know they did this when my brother lived in Tampa, Florida, they require the developer to absorb the costs when they build a development of sewer systems, building schools and building the things that all these new residents need. Do those same rules apply in Texas?
Yeah, you answer. Yeah.
So one of the reasons Texas is the place to go to is housing is so cheap, right? So my house, where I came from in Louisiana, would be 3 times the price, right? Right. So, and there, when somebody develops a neighborhood, they're paying for putting all the infrastructure in and whatever, and it goes in the price of the lot, right? So if you were to look at evaluations in other places, the land price in a development is going to be much higher. And that makes the cost of your house much higher. What we have here is the system where they have MUDs, right? Where basically, the developer fronts the money, and then the MUD district issues bonds to basically pay the developer back for the infrastructure, and then you're paying for all that in taxes over the years. Yeah, and the MUD taxes, right? And then typically your MUD taxes get paid down and go down, down, down until if you get annexed, then you start paying city taxes. Right. But, places like Greatwood and New Territory would have never developed at the rate they did, if it wasn't for, the situation where the developer is not out for the money. And that's why you have in a neighborhood, you have a bunch of different MUDs because they want to, this area is being built out. They want to recover their money faster, right? So you have one MUD district and then you create another one for the next section that's building out. And then they all have separate bonds that are issued and tax rates.
So it's good to have your treasurer in the room, huh?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, God knows everything. So, hey, I want to give you guys an example that I hope will make you go, what? What are you talking about, William? So right down the road on 99 is a place called Village at Sugarland. It's a senior living, memory care, independent living community. It's right down the road behind a church across from River Park. I want you guys to hear this. So the entire property is there to serve the elderly, okay? The entire property. I want to make sure you hear that, okay? You go to Truth and Taxation, you put in your address, you see all of the owner pieces tied to that address, the LLCs and everything. So I grabbed one of them, okay? One of them pays $150,106 a year in school taxes for a total tax bill of $327,000 for that one owner of the property, Village at Sugarland. So $327,000 a year for one of 7 legal owners of that property. That's one. Every one of them pays an amount. So if you were a resident of that community, whatever rate you pay monthly, you're paying your piece of $327,603 to live there. So people will say, well, I don't want to pay school taxes. I have a house. I'm 56 on Thursday. I'm 56 on Thursday. I don't want to pay school taxes, right? Well, the folks down the road that in some cases have memory care folks, they're 85 and 90 years old. Well, they're paying school taxes. I mean, I'm just telling you, the system is not perfect. And when you just measure it against a senior living community, paying $327,000 a year in taxes, now, you know what? They probably get the benefit of the fire and EMS services, to be candid with you. Because when you look at the service calls to that community or any senior community, they're astronomical as compared to being at one of our homes, okay? So please, as you take on education about this, you have to measure it against, we are a community, not in the way that people want to make whatever is Sandy's is mine and whatever is Millie's is mine, but nobody gets mine, right? Not that. We live in a community and we all have to pay our piece, and the way we do it is through a system that's imperfect. But really the failure, and please don't be mad, and going back to that message I got this morning, I'm not blaming the property owner in any way for this, but here's what I am blaming. I am blaming those of you that do not educate yourselves and vote. I think you are making a huge mistake, because if you do that, they will continue to spend unaccountable to you because you don't even know who they are. So quit doing that, okay? And if it's me and I'm in there, hey, I'm going to do helicopters for everybody, right? And all of a sudden you're like, we can't afford this. But you never tell me. I'm just going to have a fun time buying everybody helicopters, right? I'm being silly, but it's your job to stop your elected officials from doing the wrong thing with your money. And so you can never come to council except like 4 of you. I love you. We do a really good job, but I love you. Come to council sometime. So I'm going to sign off on this because it's been over an hour. Hey, guys, love you. Hope to see you again. Remember, be an educated voter. Get out and vote. Truth and Taxation, you'll see it all. Bye, y'all.